Hello, my name is Andre, and I'll be analyzing my infographic on the children's TV show Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. My infographic is presented on the right, and I will go in depth on the creation. I will first go over the visual potential of appearance, which is the potential to communicate how something looks using imagery, shapes, lines, or color. My first image is of the host of the show, Mr. Rogers. Who have seen the show can recognize his features and make the connection. Images to the right and bottom are from my visual language model for a side-by-side comparison. These images are low in realism and are made with simplistic shapes and little details. All these images are filled in and do not have an outline stroke. The next visual potential is relationship, which is the potential to communicate connections between things or people in the real world using connections between shapes on a page. I use an interaction encoding or Venn diagram to show the relationship between Mr. Rogers and the other characters presented in the show. The overlap section shows that Mr. Rogers is the only character connected to the different parts of the show. I also use color encoding to distinguish the categories as well, with orange for Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, green for the Land of Make-Believe, and blue for Mr. Rogers himself. The next visual potential is number, which is the potential to communicate number, amount, size of things in the world using the number, amount, size of things on a page. In my first display, I used angles or a pie chart to show how much of a role Mr. Rogers played in the show from a scale of 0 to 100% in various categories. These categories are used with precision label with the amount in red text and identity label with the color text associated with the color of the circle. My display was emulated from my visual model, which is presented on the bottom. My second numbers display was also emulated from my visual model. This display compares the amount of PBS funding before and after Mr. Rogers' speech to Congress. This uses size to display the amount of money with each money block representing $1 million. The display also uses precision label to define the amount for each stack. The next visual potential is time, which is the potential to communicate when events occurred in time relative to each other using relative position on a page. My timeline shows a brief summary of some of the awards and achievements in which Mr. Rogers has achieved throughout his life. This display uses a series of events in relative position with a vertical fashion. It shows when he received the award in red and the description underneath it. I use this as an opportunity to emulate my visual model, which is on the right. It uses an icon on the left and a description to the right in a vertical fashion. I also highlighted and bolded some parts of the description as well to place emphasis. I did not, however, emulate the icons of the model exactly. I wanted to showcase more color and a bit more details within it. The last visual potential is location, which is the potential to communicate positions of things or places relative to each other in the world using position on the page. The structure within the map are in relative position to how the structures are placed within the show. I create the physical structures with identity labels to show which structure is which. Next is visual language. I have already talked about some of the elements presented earlier, however, to go further in depth, all the images are 2D and flat. Most of the images are composed of smooth curves to the edges and corners. A circular shape is used primarily. Sections are separated horizontally and vertically with a dotted line as well as a ribbon banner. Now I'll go over my color model. My color harmony is analogous, which are colors in the same quadrant, which are red, orange, yellow, green, and blue. I tried to use the same proportions of the color, which was tan for the background color, dark brown for the text, and blue for some background elements. I tried to create a nostalgic tone by using desaturated primary colors to give off a retro vibe because of how old and meaningful the show was to some viewers. Next is my text. My typography uses mostly Futura except for the title, which uses equal sans. I use some precision and identity labels throughout my infographic. My title and headers are composed of all uppercase text, while the body text are mixed case and are used for mainly descriptions. The headers are and subheaders are used Futura heavy, while the body text used Futura light. Now I'm going to talk about visual hierarchy, which is the use of size or color to capture viewers' attention to certain elements. For my infographic, each section is relatively even from top to bottom, excluding the long vertical section. The character in the show section is relatively larger than the rest because I wanted to place more emphasis on this so viewers could be able to see the tiny characters better. The titles of each section create visual hierarchy because of its size and contrast. Viewers will be able to know what the section is about before viewing the images. For Unity, I use the same size, color, design, and display for each of the section headers to create Unity. I also use the same background color of blue for certain elements, use red text to highlight importance, and use shapes of circles for most images to create Unity. For variety, I tried to use different colored elements of images for each section so they would all look different. The last part of my analysis is layout and alignment. My layout model uses distinct separations between sections with 4 horizontal sections on the left with 1 long vertical section on the right. My visual and layout model also uses dotted lines to help define these sections. My layout model uses a lot of text to format each section. However, my visual model had a lot of white space and breathing room, which I used to incorporate in my final. Elements on the left are all center aligned, while sections on the right elements are left aligned. My final slide is a culmination of all the layout models I used to create my final infographic.